Hey there, welcome to another Tesla Motors Club podcast. My name is Lewis.
And I'm Mike.
I'm Doug.
On today's episode, we're going to talk about FSD version 11 possibly coming out soon. Some new updates around the software stack. Doug goes over some install that he did for a charger, some threads that are interesting, and much more to come on episode number 31, which starts now. And we're back. How are you gentlemen doing?
Fine. Doing
Good.
just fine.
It's been a long break, huh?
Yeah.
Back from hiatus, the Christmas and whatever other
Holidays and New Year's. Yeah.
We haven't washed away yet.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad that you're both here with me. A lot of exciting things happened in the Tesla world over the last couple of weeks while we were on break. Hey there, Jones.
Jones
1.
Hey, Michael.
Back again. Yep. Thanks for coming and joining us today. So I guess we'll jump into it. FSD version 11, the infamous version 11 that we have been talking about for ages, is finally about to come out. Maybe.
What's 11? So Elon says, looks like version 11.3 will be ready for wide release in about 2 weeks. Many major improvements. What's 11.3 as opposed to?
So basically 11 itself is the consolidated stack. And the reason 11.3 will be the first version that goes wide because 11, 0, 1, and 2 were internal to Tesla employees only. So technically, like, Elon's had version 11 for 6 months, at least, from how he's talked about it. There was actually a tweet, where was it? It was like January. Actually, no, it's been about a year. It was like January 7th, I think, 2022.
Right.
Where Elon first said version 11 will be out next month.
Coming soon.
Right?
Coming soon.
So he was about a year off, which is fine. It happens.
What do you mean by next month, though? Did he mean for everybody or just for employees? Or I guess you can.
Well, so the funny thing is employees didn't get it until a few months ago.
Mm-hmm.
So either way, it was a bad prediction. But he originally said it would be released for like everybody next month. I'm pretty sure is what he said at the time.
I never get those predictions. I mean, something Mike said earlier that makes sense, right? Like if you're gonna say 2 weeks, he says that often, 2 weeks or a month, right? When people say a month, you're like, oh yeah, it's definitely about to come out, and maybe at most 1 month becomes 3 months, not 1 month becomes years. So I mean, it was 2017, right? Where Elon said, oh, in about 6 months, there'll be a no intervention drive from New York to LA or something, right? Sure. 6 months in 2017. So 6 months, I guess. I know you might think anything can happen in 6 months, but certainly within 2 weeks, a month, you would think you'd have a good grasp on what actually is going to be done.
Well,
it depends.
You have that Tesla reality distortion field effect going on. So, time dilation being what it is.
It's the gravity field.
Yeah, I think the problem is, so normally in software, right, you have a whole estimates are bad, right? Like most software is late. Most projects are late, right? Like the old adage, you can pick your scope or you can pick your due date, but you can't pick both, right? If you try to do both, you're going to be wrong.
In both cases.
I feel like FSD is a much harder problem because it's an unsolved problem. So it's not like adding a button to a website. It's not like doing something that is like quantifiably understood and controlled.
So let me ask you, Lewis, being a software geek that you are, if you were on the Tesla team doing FSD and you've been working away for the last 2 years on it, and all of a sudden they rip away all your ultrasonic sensors, is that any kind of impact to what you do?
It depends, because what I would say is I don't think that the ultrasonic sensors impacted the FSD stack, because on the whole, I would say I doubt the models do much with the ultrasonics.
So you think they're?
I feel like
primarily
radar
camera.
was maybe would have been a big impact for sure, but they
I
did
could see
that
radar
a year
right.
ago or whatever, right? Like they started doing that much earlier.
I guess it depends where you draw the lines between the different software features. Certainly, what do you call it? Summon. Certainly, Summon was using.
I was just see, that's where I was going. Was Summon is part of FSD, and Summon does rely on the ultrasonics, as far as I understand how things work.
Sure.
I mean,
yeah. So Summon currently does not use FSD Beta, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, when were they working on improving Summon with the new tech stack? I don't know when they were working on it. You know, one of the engineers hinted at saying that the models around parking lot navigation were going to be coming out soon. You know, that was
soon.
An AI. Soon. He specifically said by the end of the year he was hoping.
Yeah, I feel like Summon is its own thing, and certainly, you know, just as people using Autopilot hasn't seen any updates
in a very long time,
in a while, because and you know, maybe rightly so, all the work has been in the FSD beta. You know, my Summon stopped working months ago, and when I took it in to try to get it repaired, they kept the car all day and didn't actually do anything, and they just said, "Oh, this is a known firmware bug. Thanks for bringing it to our attention." Well, right. Which then it's known, so I didn't really bring it to your attention, and then they did nothing for me. So it's just okay. It's just not going to work.
And what about the infamous auto park? You know, I mean,
yeah, auto park.
Mine never auto parked. I never could find a way for it to work right.
I've had it work on occasion. Sometimes it surprises me and it does a good job. Sometimes it just gives up, and it's always slower than what I can do anyway. So it's only a novelty, because you know, if anybody's actually waiting, it's just embarrassing. So
would you include those two features as part of FSD, or would you consider them to be separate items?
Well, I tend to think that they're just coded separately. Like, obviously they depended on the ultrasonics, you know, at least they seem to, and if ultrasonics are no longer, like, I don't even know what people buying cars now, what do they get? Because does Auto Park even work at all for them, since they don't have sensors?
I've been told
probably not until vision only version comes out, which I think is going to require
an option.
Yeah, I think it's going to require version 11. So okay. So let's get down to the good news. The good news about version 11. Okay, yeah, I see Michael's comment. Auto Park
with no other cars,
but I only trust it when there are no other cars around.
But what's interesting, just to continue with Auto Park, though, is it has evolved over the time that I've had my car. You know, I got my car end of 2018. Like, it used to only be able to park if there were cars there. Like, if you're parking in lines, you know, it only backs in, and it could only park if there was a car on either side, because I think it only depended on ultrasonics then. But with a recent update, I don't know how recent,
but I haven't
actually looks at the lines.
You know, so my Model 3, you know, I've tried to use that at the Tesla charger, the supercharging, and there's always cars on both sides, and there's always lines, and it won't work. So, you know, maybe I'm missing something.
I've had it work, but it's so slow that it, you know, I've had people drive around me while I'm trying to use it. I'm like, okay, let me just stop it. So
I just say I personally never tried Auto Park or Summon.
Well, you haven't supercharged yet.
I haven't even tried them as a party trick. Haven't used them at all.
You should play with Summon if it works for you at all. It's kind of cool. Like, when it did work, you know, you have to keep an eye on it. But I'd be at the hardware store, and often the entrance is far away from the exit. And to just bring the car to you, especially when it's raining, it's kind of cool. And mainly just to see people reacting like, "Ooh, there's nobody in that car," and it's coming towards you.
Car.
That was fun. And I'm really disappointed that it doesn't work right now. And it's some known firmware bug. Well, what happened? Why can't I use it anymore? It always says visual system obstructed. It always gives me that error when the visual system is fine while I'm using autopilot. So I don't get it. So.
Yeah,
we'll see.
So in
2 weeks we'll see.
Yeah. So Wes, friend of the show, been on before. He said, although Elon hasn't explicitly said it, it would seem that some V11 features or improvements have bled into the 3.x holiday branch that we have. Seems like they pivoted with Chuck's unprotected left turn, and at least that's his take. So they've definitely pulled some features back. So I feel like we should say, you know, Elon originally jokingly he said, "Oh, V11 that'll be out next month," back a year ago. So you know he was only off by about a year. But that's not really a fair criticism in the sense that they did pull features forward into the other branches, and there are reasons of why they probably didn't just blankly push the button and, you know, switch it to 11. You know, just it goes to 11, right? That you just do it because you can. But yeah, so I mean, I think the important thing is, you know, V11. Why is it a big deal? It is a big deal because it is finally going to use the new and improved architecture and modeling stack that they've been working on for over a year, that we've seen showcased at multiple talks and conventions and, you know, all that stuff, that they're finally going to be using it for highway driving. So up until this point, as soon as you were on the highway and you're using, you know, if you have FSD Beta, you were not using the new models. You were using the same old crappy, I shouldn't say crappy, I should say the same old code that you've been using for several years. And the funny thing is, it honestly works pretty well. Like, I don't really have many complaints on the highway driving.
I would agree with that. When I
so it actually works quite well, despite it being old. I think what's exciting is going to see how much better it can get with the new technology. I think it's finally gonna they'll be able to make even more improvements to it with the new architecture. So,
and that's a good point, Lewis. On the highway, FSD, when I subscribed to it, for example, worked fine on the highway.
And that was navigate on autopilot.
Yeah,
that was the old
navigate
code.
on autopilot. Yeah,
that was the old code.
Very old code.
I'm interested.
Well, I mean, over a year old, right? Like, they hadn't updated it.
It was over a year old.
Yeah,
but they got the job done.
I'm just wondering what people that don't get or don't pay for FSD, what will their experience be? Like, the main difference I see is like when I'm on city streets or whatever, you know, I have that sort of visualization. It's mainly a white background, and but when I had FSD Beta, you know, that it kind of had a different visualization. You know, will everybody have that FSD Beta visualization? And when you are on the highway, like, I think everyone still has, like, by default, you get, unless they change the packaging again, you get lane keeping and adaptive cruise control. You know,
if you have
what is that experience
enhanced autopilot? So, you know, there's multiple tiers.
So they brought that back because that went away for a while. Okay,
correct. That went away and enhanced came back. So I mean, so the other good news, the thing that you kind of brought up, is now going forward, we are no longer on divergent branches of software. There's no longer a split version. So whether you have FSD Beta or you don't have FSD Beta, we are all going to be on the same software stack.
Yeah.
Which is probably better news to me, like bigger news to me, even than the V11 coming out soon, TM. Because you know, historically, those of us that have been on FSD Beta, we've lagged behind weeks, sometimes even months in software features. So we get those features way later than the general populace. Now, everybody's going to get all the features at the same time. We're, you know, within reason. I think they're still going to have like the early people versus the late, you know, it's not every car updates at the same day, right? On the versions, they kind of stagger it, but there won't be this weird, you know, branch split of, FSD Beta people, you're on an old version and everyone else is, you know, 2 or 3 versions ahead.
Right.
So that's going to be really exciting.
With winter here on the East Coast, I've really wanted that opening your door feature without having to, you know, get the door handle defrosted because it's frozen up.
Chip away.
So I've been really wanting that feature. But again, with this single stack, and I've mentioned it before, I just kind of wonder how things will really behave, because I find a difference in priorities between navigating on autopilot and FSD Beta. And the main one that stuck out to me from my long trips is when I'm on a 2-lane highway, FSD Beta is always trying to get me out of the right lane. So it'll just say move to left lane to stay out of the rightmost lane. Okay. But navigate on autopilot wants me to get out of the passing lane. So it wants me to move over. And I don't want to be in the passing lane. I want to be sitting in the right lane because I don't want to piss the local cops off. So I wonder I'm just curious what wins out. And what is the design goal or argument to keep you out of the right lane? I mean, I understand a lot more stuff might be happening in the right lane, people merging in and whatnot, but it got annoying. There'll be a long stretch to the next exit and it's still pushing me out of the right lane.
Right.
What do you want?
Yeah, I've seen a number of threads where people have complained about that, where they're like, hey, I'm in the left lane, I have a left turn coming up, and for some reason it wants me to move all the way to the right lane, and then by the time it realizes to go back to the left lane, it can't get over, so I missed my turn. Things along that nature. From what we've been, again, none of us have it yet. It's only Tesla employees have version 11, but it sounds like it's supposed to be better. The way they're talking about it, the way Elon's been talking about it, is improvements. There's a lot of improvements over that. So we'll have to see. I'm hopeful that there will be improvements, but you're right, there will be differences in what it prioritizes for sure. And with the combined software stack now, what will likely happen is everybody will be using quote unquote FSD beta, whether they have the full beta version or not. So even if you just have like traffic aware cruise control or something, it's still going to be leveraging the new stack, most likely, where it's, varying amounts of configurability. So all of those features are going to probably be a little bit different. But it should be, yeah, well, I mean, we'll have to see. It'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully in a couple of weeks. He said in about 2 weeks. Who knows? But I generally speaking, there's a running gag in software where some teams always say in 2 weeks, and you'll go a year and a half just saying in 2 weeks. I don't think that's the case here. I feel like they're close enough. They've had it a wide enough pool of users in their own internal testing. I think that we're likely to actually see it. Okay, if not in 2 weeks, maybe in a month. But it should be relatively soon.
Yeah, we'll find out, won't we?
We'll find out. So it's going to be really exciting.
2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks. So we've had a few comments. So let's see. I'm gonna guess your name is Beaver. No, that's not right. I'm not sure what you're trying to with 73AV8R. I'm really bad at reading
Saver.
LeetCode. Apparently, I'm
Saver.
I don't know, or I'm too bad at reading LeetCode. Will version so what he says is will version 11 see speed bumps? Right now, my car wants to Dukes of Hazzard over them in my neighborhood. I've seen a number of people complain about this. Speed bumps are certainly an issue. There's some, concern about like removing radar and things like that, not seeing it. I'm not sure how much that would have helped because it depends on how low it's pointed, what the angles are. So extremely pronounced and obvious speed bumps, I feel like the current software will see them a little bit. But yeah, mostly they're not. And over time they'll improve it, hopefully. But yeah, it's a bit of a concern.
We had in our little world here, we had issues with train crossings. I've got several.
73 Aviator, that's his name. I apologize. Yeah. I see it now. 73 Aviator. Totally makes sense. Sorry.
Yeah. So, I didn't have too many issues with speed bumps, but my car did try to do the Dukes of Hazzard over a couple of our train crossings. It didn't understand that there's this incline going over the train tracks.
There's a grade change. Wes had a little bit of a comment regarding speed bumps. I guess maybe in response to that question.
Yeah.
He said data engine sometimes sees speed bumps now with 25.x, not in a highly reliable way though. I've had it when I had FSD beta. It would see the speed bumps that were marked that had the hash lines on
across it.
Yeah, and it would slow down for those. That's pretty reliable on that. The ones that weren't marked, yeah, Dukes of Hazzard. It would try to.
The problem is 17 miles an hour is pretty fast to go over some speed bumps. So like, I'm not sure what they're gonna do there because some speed bumps that's fine, but like I've seen, we have some crazy ones here sometimes where I've seen in Texas where it's just like if you're going faster than like 8 miles an hour, you're doing something.
17 is fine for the neighborhood, what they call traffic calming humps, as opposed to speed bumps. But like your sort of parking lot speed bump, yeah, you don't want to be going too fast on those. But you should be slow in the parking lot anyway.
Yeah,
if FSD beta would slow down in the parking lots instead of trying to do 35 miles an hour.
Coilovers and his 21-inch tires hitting those bumps at 17 miles an hour. Ooh, won't end well.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I would like to point out, I agree with Michael's comment. So Michael Mooney said, if you change the assertive setting, it won't try to keep you out of the fast lane. So there are some settings you can tweak even now where with that auto lane change thing where it keeps trying to swap on you, you can kind of get it to be a little bit better to like not nag you as much. But I don't know. It's still not perfect. And, you know, it's getting better. Overall, though, I'm really happy with where FSD is today, and V11, I'm looking forward to seeing how it gets better. It is not the I just drive from New York to LA. It's not that,
not even
but
close.
It can drive 98, 99% of the time on most of the trips I do. It can do basically the whole thing. It can't do the parking lot, and I don't trust it to get out of my garage and my driveway. But between those, it'll do it mostly by itself.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see.
I'm the skeptic here.
Mike's skeptical. Yeah, I mean, we'll see where it is. But anyway, so that's the exciting news on FSD Beta. And also with that, combining the software stacks so that everybody's on the same software branch, which is
that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, that's awesome. Very excited. So next up, let's jump into Doug. Pretended to be an electrician.
He did. He did.
Successfully. As a formerly licensed electrician, I was licensed and did work as an electrician. I do not recommend that everybody do this. However, I will say it is much easier than you think. And if you're smart and you use your head and you watch some good YouTube videos, most people can probably do this without a problem.
Hey, I mean, I'm not a licensed electrician, but I did study some electrical engineering as well as applied physics, you know, in the graduate level. So I should be okay.
Oh, so you'll be able to explain to us why you got shocked.
I did not get shocked at all. Yeah, so it's kind of funny because so I guess wow, it's been many weeks now since because we had a hiatus. But you know, some time ago, Mike talked about his EVSE that he installed.
Yep.
And that was, I should say that it's sort of sponsored because the EVSE was provided. But what's interesting about it is that these guys originally provided an EVSE to me, and it was one that needed to be hardwired. And where I wanted, and they were supposed to cover the installation with an electrician. And so where I wanted to install it, you know, I looked at the breaker panel, and there were no breakers available. And also it was an outside install, and it was going to be about 15 feet from the house where it was going to go. So they had a connection with a you know, electrician or whatever, and some local installers, and their estimate was yeah, thanks. Their estimate was $4,000 for the install, which was just nuts. Insane. I mean, I think the reasoning was a couple things. One was that since the breaker was full, they had to add some element that on its own cost $1,500.
Were they adding a sub panel because
no, but they were adding something. Maybe it would have to be a sub panel, I guess, because it would have to have its own breaker, and then also this unit that on its own costs $1,500, and I forget what it was called, but it basically would detect the load on the house, and it would cut off the EVSE load if the load on the house got too high or whatever. So that alone was $1,500, and I think they wanted to, like, I just wanted to put it on the fence that's back there, but they wanted to put it on a post and pressure treated wood, and they also wanted to dig a trench and bury the electrical and all that sort of stuff. And so I just kind of gave up on it. And well, then they wanted to send one with a you know, a plug on it with a NEMA 1450 plug, and so that went to Mike because I don't have that either where I wanted to install it. So Mike did it, and that worked fine. But I still had this thing. I was like, okay, well, I'm going to use it because as it is, I was using the mobile charger that comes with the car on 110. Just plugging it into the plug it into the wall and have an extension cord going out the door, you know. So I was like, okay, we can do better than that. So let me just figure this thing out and wire it. And the big thing was when I went to the breaker panel and took off the front panel, it turned out, guess what? One of these breakers wasn't even connected to anything. So there was a free breaker, even though you couldn't really tell. So I went ahead and wired the thing up, and I do have a couple photos for those live. Let's see. Let's see if this will work. Okay, yeah. So that's the unit. Yep. I'm just sort of messing with it, and let's see if this lets me. That's my nephew who was just kind of around helping me out. It's actually at his place, and so yeah, we just put it on the fence. That's the mounting plate for the thing. There's nothing special about here, and just sort of, this is me running the wiring, and there's also a connection for Ethernet, and this is sort of more finalized with all the cable management. So I just ran the cable along the fence in a controlled manner instead of trying to.
Is that a garden hose holder that you've got underneath it?
It could be used for a garden hose. It's just for whatever. I got it from Home
That's
Depot,
a very clever idea, actually. It gives a nice, easy way to hang the cable.
Yeah, just give you a place to hang the cable, and it's nearby, and it's in the center. Yep. I don't know what the design was. I think they expected you to just kind of wrap it around the unit, because the unit has kind of a lip on the front of it. But I'm like, okay.
Oh, Tesla's works, right? It's intended for you to wrap the cable around it.
The little green holder is detached from the unit, and so that's all part of the holder.
Yeah, so that's kind of probably a nicer feature, and probably better for someone at home. This one feels a little bit more commercial intended, but yeah, it's just it's a general utility hanger thing that can hold up to 50 pounds or something, and that's plenty. And I thought it would be neat just to put it there. And yeah, it's fairly clean when I hang it up, and so there's nothing too special. So everything else is the same as what Mike talked about a couple weeks ago. Yeah. But it's a big step up for me, because I was charging at 1 kilowatt pretty much from,
so you should be at
110.
7 right now, maybe a little more.
And now I'm doing, between 7 and 8, because I put it on a 40 amp breaker. And I'm glad I only did 40 amp instead of trying to do like 50 amp or whatever, because already 8 gauge cable is a pain to deal with. 6 gauge would have been.
I had to do 4 gauge for mine, but yes, I feel you.
Yeah.
It was fun. What do you carry around like lobster claws to move something like around?
Mine's in conduit, so it was it wasn't that bad.
And for the audience who might be wondering, Doug is perfectly right in putting this unit outside. It's weatherproof. It's NEMA 14, I believe, weather sealing, so it can withstand something like minus 10 degrees to 130 degrees, watertight. It's a great unit for being outside.
Yeah, and worked out fine. And of course, the cable I got was for outside. It was UFB, I guess. It's rated to be buried, but I didn't want to deal with digging a trench. And so the electrician wanted $4,000. I spent about $100 in parts.
That's
the
cool.
Cabling was $70. That's probably the most expensive bit. That was
the wire.
The wire.
Copper.
I mean, it was like over like $2 a foot or something, $2.15 a foot, something like that. And I got 33 feet, and I probably had about 3 feet to spare. And that little hook thing was under $10, and I replaced the breaker that was open, put a 40 amp breaker in there, and that was like $15. So it was very cheap install. Piece of wood was maybe $10, that I put mounted it to on the fence. And so it was pretty cheap install, and I did it in about a day. So I'm pretty happy with it. Yeah, it's a big step up, I drive around, and then instead of like seeing 24 plus hours to charge, it's only like, 2 hours or something, 2 or 3 hours. So I've been pretty happy about it.
That's awesome. So are these for sale already? Like, are these something that people can buy now?
You can get it on Amazon around $500, I guess. They had some discounts. I don't know what they have now.
I think if I remember right, Doug, the normal price was like $550.
Yeah, and they're pretty cool. Like the software is pretty nice. It has a lot of connectivity. You can either connect to it with your phone via Bluetooth that has Wi-Fi or
internet
or the hard RJ45 Ethernet cable. And you can set it up to just start automatically when you plug in, or you can code it to any RFID card, or you can code it to like connect through your phone to start charging or whatever. So you can set a price and stuff too, right? So you could share it with the neighborhood and start charging people. I don't know the legalities of that, but it's nice. It's pretty nice. Yeah.
And I will say, when I got mine, there were 2 updates already available for the firmware. So that's if you were to get one, the first thing I would suggest is you get it, you turn it on, and then you immediately check and see about updates. The updates fixed a Wi-Fi issue I had. So
right, like when I first opened it up, and before I had it like ready to install, I literally just sort of plugged in a like a 110 outlet, and just plugged it into the wall just to play with the connectivity and communicate with it, and test out the app and all that stuff, because I wasn't yet sure I wanted to go through all the trouble of trying to actually install it. And it was pretty nice. Yeah, I was able to set up all that software and stuff. Just that if you look at the photo, there was like a yellow sort of not ready light on the charge, because it was a little confused, I think, with the getting 120 instead of getting 120 from an outlet as opposed to getting 240.
Yeah.
So just so everyone's aware, so we will have a link in the description, and be aware this is technically kind of a sponsored thing. They didn't pay us, but they sent us the unit for free to try it out. So that's the scope of what we received for it.
And they didn't expect us to talk about it again. So maybe maybe this isn't quite sponsored, but
it's not really sponsored, but
we'll include a link.
Fully transparent. There'll be a link in the description for info.
And we haven't even mentioned the name of the manufacturer, so
that's right.
The audio listeners don't know, but it's Autel is the manufacturer.
Autel, AUTEL.
Yeah. And I'll say, this is, like you said, Doug, this unit leans much more to the commercial side of the house than it does like my juice box, which is a home use unit. There's a big difference between the 2 units. The juice box, I'm not sure I'd trust outside for an extended length of time, where this box I'd have no problems, leaving it outside in the weather. Not to mention you got the RFI card that you said, and the fact you can set up sharing so your neighbors can charge too. You can charge them or you can give it away free, your choice, but it's got some nice features to it.
Yeah.
Have all your neighbors come hang out.
Yeah.
Get iced by your neighbor.
Yep. Alrighty. So moving on, we do have a TMC thread that we wanted to show. It's interesting. Thread of the week.
Well, they're all interesting,
even though it's kind of not this week anymore because of the break. But yeah, so there was somebody on Twitter tweeted at Elon, basically complaining about the the steering wheel nag. So those of you that that do drive with FSD Beta, that they'll occasionally it complains. It wants you to put a little torque on the wheel. And there's a number of people out there that cheat and buy weights and water bottles and do all kinds of things to bypass the security. But Elon said he agreed with the notion of, if somebody has a lot of experience using FSD, so in this example, they said 10,000 miles driven on FSD, can you turn off the nag option? And Elon said he agreed with that. So he said update coming in January. So I don't know if that's going to be part of the version 11.3 or not, if it's going to actually be dictated based on how many miles you've driven, if it's going to only be in certain circumstances, maybe like highway driving. I personally, I wouldn't feel comfortable not holding onto the wheel in the city driving part. I feel like there's enough unexpected random stuff that happens all the time. But I could see on the highway, like, okay, maybe you're not sitting there. I'm usually one-handed on it anyway on the yoke, but
that makes a lot of sense. I would say the biggest downside in my long trips on the highway is is the steering wheel nag, and because it's sometimes it's kind of variable. I have my hand on the wheel, but it's not necessarily comfortable, and somehow I'm not giving enough torque. And as I've said before, I've had the thing kick me out, even though I have my hand on the wheel, and it just okay, I'm not touching it well enough. And sometimes you can just press a button, like roll the selectors or press the button on the steering wheel. But that doesn't always work. Like at some point it doesn't let you do that. So you do have to torque it. And then often you end up pushing it out of FSD because you torque it too much. And it's just kind of a pain in the butt, really. And if they have the camera and they can see you're paying attention, I think that's probably a good way to go. I'm not sure how detailed they're being. They should be alerting you if you are looking drowsy, because that's the main concern on the highway. I would agree that you probably should, like if it's a normal like surface streets, that it should probably still nag you to have your hands on the wheel.
Right.
But on the highway, hands on the wheel is kind of a pain in the butt. But then falling asleep is the big deal, and that's probably most of the FS or most of the autopilot deaths have been from someone falling asleep, I would guess. So if it's looking at you, can it alert you when you're sleeping? It'd be nice if it vibrated the seat, or could start algorithmically telling, okay, you're drowsy, like yawning, or how long your blinks are, other sort of indicators. That would be.
This is a poll. I'm going to vote yes. So for those interested, just to see the results. So basically, they're asking, will hands-free driving be a big win for Tesla? I think, I think yes. That being said, I do agree with some of the comments on the thread. The argument is there are other manufacturers out there that already do hands-free driving, at least for like lane assist and stuff like that.
Yeah. Mercedes.
Mercedes being a prime example. But I mean, we don't know the scope of what this is going to be, right? Like it's too vague. It's 5 words or 6 words in a Twitter thread. Like, what does that mean? 5 words, if I can count properly.
And someone else has to actually implement it, right? Someone else has to actually do it.
Exactly. He's not the one writing the code and testing the results. So, I mean, I imagine V11 is going to, if it is doing half of what they say that it is, it's probably they're getting to the point where they do feel comfortable being hands-free most of the time or more often. So I could see reduction of the nagging. Certain environments not doing the nagging, but I don't know.
And I would guess that this tweet is probably the first time whatever engineer has to deal with it saw this, right? That's probably the first time they're hearing about it.
I won't make that claim, but I am aware of the fact, having personally been on the end of that at other companies with executives saying things to customers, and I'm the first one to find out, from that, and then having to build it. And we know for a fact that Elon has done that to people. There have been engineers that have interviewed that have explicitly said, yeah, we found out that we were doing this thing because he announced it publicly to everyone. So we don't know that this is one of those cases, but it's certainly possible.
I do have the sense, though, that there has been some work on this. Like it's hard to quantify. It's all anecdotal, but I do have the sense that the nags have been less frequent. They're still there, but they feel less frequent since some update, probably since they started using the cameras. So, it's just the question is, how detailed are the cameras? What are they doing? They're certainly not doing all they could do. And it would be nice to have other alerts besides just the flashing or beeping. Like there's some kind of vibrating would be nice.
It is annoying because, if the camera is in the internal camera, right, the one that's watching the driver, if it's able to detect certain things, it nags you less. Like we've known that's a thing. And if it detects certain stuff, it starts nagging you more. So for example, like if you hold up something like you're on a cell phone or something, it starts nagging you constantly, or very, very frequently. It's quite annoying. But I am a bit concerned about what about eye detection things? Like if you're wearing sunglasses, it can't see your eyes. They don't have infrared cameras.
Right.
So the question is how much is that going to be an annoyance? But hey, at this point, anything they do will be an improvement over what they have today. With regard to the person driving the car, not necessarily with regard to everyone else's safety in mind.
Yeah.
But I would imagine that most people that are less safe about it are already cheating and violating the system anyway with cheat devices. So I'm not too worried about it. And I look forward to seeing how it does. But
yeah, that should be a signal to them. The fact that people even bother with these kind of cheat devices, they're not. I don't feel like they're malicious. They're just like, okay, this is getting annoying. And I remember back in the day when it was just version 1 autopilot. It was the the Mobileye system, and when they added that nag, I don't remember if it was added or if it just became more frequent after the first death, I guess. And a lot of comments on the forum were like, "This is completely unusable now," because it really did become.
I can't remotely read a book or play video games while driving.
That's right.
This is unacceptable to me.
But I feel like the people, they get these devices or hang a weight or stick a water bottle in or whatever, the steering wheel. It would be nice just to not have to even worry about that. Okay, people are trying to defeat it. Well, we should work with the user, right? If the user, what did Elon say? All input is error. The fact that the user is having to go through this trouble to improve their experience, their user experience, they should, Tesla should figure out a way to improve the user experience in a way that doesn't harm safety.
Sure. So, I think that's all we really need to say about this topic.
Sure.
I do want to bring up another topic that I didn't mention earlier, but I still think is cool, and I will even share for this as well. But there was some news for those Model S and X drivers out there, like myself. If you hate the yoke, guess what? It is official now. You can order it on their website. Tesla now has released a steering wheel for the Model S and the Model X. It is the default option even, so you can still pick yoke, or you can see the picture changes. They also sell a replacement steering wheel, so if you already have a yoke car and you want to swap yours out, you can do this.
Now, one thing I noticed looking at this picture, I see the wheel, but I still don't see the main complaint, which is like turning stalks and actual like clicky buttons as opposed to these soft touch.
Good luck with that.
So what I will say is, as I've had, I don't know when did I get the car? In May? I think I got it in May, something like that. So having driven a yoke Model S Plaid for this time, I love the yoke. I have no interest in getting a steering wheel. My only complaint is the turn signals being on the wheel. So like as you turn it, so making it a round wheel that still has the buttons for the turn signals does nothing for me. I have zero intention of buying this. And I don't think it fixes any problem whatsoever. But there are people that I've seen that do genuinely think this is an issue, and they really do want the round steering wheel, and the stalks are not their issue. I think it has to do with how you grip it, how you hold it. I'm usually drive with one hand a lot of times, and like where my arm is, like I'm usually fine. And if you use one hand and you like palm the yoke, moving it around, I don't have an issue with it. But again, so for those of you that are interested in having a steering wheel, there is now an official option.
But let me ask, when you palm the steering wheel around, do you get errant button presses?
No, because I usually do it on the side. So I don't usually have that problem. They also, if you notice the top of the yoke, that's kind of like hooked a little bit. So oftentimes I'll like hook a finger around it, and I'm just using one finger to turn the wheel as opposed to like my whole hand. But yeah, so personally, I think the yoke is great. I don't miss the wheel at all. I do miss the stalks and having for the turn signals. I think that is the button for turn signals. It works great most of the time, but every now and then, like a traffic circle or a roundabout or rotary, depending on where you're from and what you want to call it, that's really annoying, because signaling that you're leaving the traffic signal, or the turn signal, when you're like, your wheels all jacked up and you're like, shoot, which way am I turning? How do I signal? Like that's where it gets a little funky.
But Lewis, I get the yoke and all that, but where am I going to put my little chrome spinner knob?
Yeah.
So I don't really understand the rationale between of losing the stalks. I mean, I understand there might be some cost savings, but it's such a logical design, like user interface. It makes so much sense. You know, I'm turning to the right, I click in the direction I'm going. You know, and you know, why lose those?
I think it's an aesthetic thing, to be honest. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's primarily what it is. I don't know. So Michael Mooney brings up, you know, he said, I don't think people's issues with the yoke is turning. It's the issue more with FSD. The car's turning the wheel, and then you have to grab it if it's doing something wrong. Yeah, that's probably a legitimate concern. So me personally, having FSD, and I use it most of the time when I'm driving my car any kind of distance, I definitely use it. I don't have my hands ever off the wheel. Like if I'm in FSD, I'm still holding onto the wheel to some degree because I don't use a cheater device. And it's, for me, the point of FSD is that I don't have to pay attention as closely. Like that's the primary thing. I don't have to worry about the stop and go traffic. I don't have to deal with, you know, the most of the stuff. So I don't let go a lot. Unless I'm on the highway and there's no turning. So at that point, it doesn't matter. Like grabbing it is irrelevant. It's easy. But yeah, if you're doing like local city driving and the yoke's kind of jerking all over the place, I leave my hand on the damn thing. Like I don't know. I don't necessarily understand that problem, but either way, they now do have an official one. I have seen there's aftermarket ones. Some folks have purchased them. I personally did not like the design of any of the aftermarket ones. I was a big fan of. There's a gentleman that actually had a post in a thread over a year ago on TMC about doing his own like taking a Model 3 steering wheel and wiring that into a Model S that had a yoke, and that's probably what I would have done if I really cared. And he added stocks as well. So for those that do really want stocks, there is the ability to implement that. It is possible. You really need to know what you're doing when it comes to engineering.
Yeah.
And there are some open source projects out there where you can take the entire encasing of the driving column or the steering column, and you can get the one for a Model 3. It'll fit. It has the holes for the stocks. You can put the stocks in, and then the way that it wires up, there's some microcontrollers. You can hook it all up and do that. So that is like an option for those that really care about that. I haven't cared enough because I don't drive enough for it to really bother me. I think my car has about 2,000 miles on it in whatever it's been, over 6 months. I'm definitely in the not driving a ton person.
One of our producers had a failed steering wheel replacement. Yep. What remind me what he was trying to do and what he managed to do.
So he was trying to replace his yoke with an aftermarket steering wheel.
Yeah.
And in removing one of the things inside the assembly, there was a part that broke, and then it came undone, and like it basically unwrapped this whole thing, and it unspooled, and that's basically the coil that detects like the orientation as you're rotating the wheel. So he had to get a whole replacement. It was a big pain.
So things can go wrong when you try to do this yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, things can go wrong if you try to do it yourself. So certainly, yeah. But I don't know. I think if you watch videos, it's not that bad. The instructions are out there. The assembly details are out there, but you still have to be careful.
I don't get why they don't put the horn on the airbag.
I agree. That's another complaint that a lot of people have had, and they really should. So what's funny is there was a tweet about a year ago, right, when people were complaining about this. And Elon said, don't worry, it's just a software update. We'll easily do that. The problem is, I think it's a little misleading because there's no actual actuator that detects the press on the airbag in the center. There's nothing underneath. It's like that I've seen in any disassemblies that actually could do that. What they actually released as a software update is if you mash the right-hand side. So instead of mashing the middle and pushing it, if you just kind of like smack the touch sensitive side on the right and just kind of hit all the buttons, it'll honk the horn instead of you finding specifically like where's
the horn button.
So I mean, I think that's an improvement, but it's still not pushing the center of the wheel. It's pushing the right side of the wheel.
Is that another one of those examples of software not being able to account for hardware?
For hardware.
Yes, it's a software. almost does what you want it to do, but not quite. If you actually wanted a real problem, you need a hardware change. So we'll see.
Cool.
Yeah, so we do have a few comments here. I see Jimmy commented, said, his 2021 Model S Plaid refresh still has no AAA gaming, the Steam update essentially. They want to charge $2,000. There's no tilt screen either. So yeah, so that is actually hardware restricted. So Model S and X, if they came out in 2021, they most likely do not have the enough RAM in their MCU to actually do the Steam game update. So if you bought one in 2022, depending on when in the year, if you're the very beginning of the year, you may not be able to. If you're later in the year, you can. I do have that update, so it's like having a Steam Deck in your car, which is really cool for charging. So Steam does work on my Model S Plaid, but I also do have the tilt screen motor, which he complains there's no tilt screen either. You would hope there's a retrofit for the tilt screen, so the assembly of the screen itself does have all the mechanisms necessary. It just doesn't have the motor drives, which I think is why they didn't do it. I think they had a parts issue. So it's possible they could do a retrofit for that. There is a retrofit for the Steam gaming, but it costs about $2,000, which is unfortunate.
Replace the processor, don't you?
It's mostly a RAM issue from what I've seen.
Oh, really?
So I think it was the amount of RAM in the system for playing games. Yeah.
But the RAM, I'm assuming the RAM is just
it's one unit. It's all it's one board. You can't swap it out. It's not it's not something you can do.
Oh, come on, a little surface mount technology on the kitchen tabletop. Yeah.
So if you know what you're doing, I don't want to say that you couldn't fix it yourself. I have been known to desolder and resolder by hand surface mount devices. It is a huge pain in the butt. I take cell phones apart and use a microscope to solder and desolder components. But that would void your warranty for sure. I'd probably, if it was in my situation, if I was in that situation, I'd probably just pay the $2,000.
But at least it's not part of the SoC. At least it's a separate chip on the board.
Correct. So, but yeah. So anyway, so that is the thing to be aware of. Joe also complains. He said the 2021 Plaid acceleration shutter in the 35 to 44 mile an hour range is a horrible feeling for a vehicle that's that expensive. 140,000 plus. Model 3 performance is so much smoother. So I have to say I haven't driven a Model 3, so I don't have one to compare side by side. I mostly do not notice the shutter. I don't really have that. I have seen it. I have experienced it once or twice, but most of the time I don't experience it. So I'm not sure what's going on there. There's a whole thread about lowering links and adjusting your suspension and all this other stuff.
What was the cause of the shutter? It's a hardware issue. There's a resonance somewhere, or what?
Yeah, it's something to do with the control arms, I think, for basically the ride height. Because there's people that have done things with the alignment where they adjust it and whatever to try to get rid of the shutter. And there's folks that claim they've fixed it versus not fixing it. I haven't messed with mine at all, so I couldn't give you a definitive answer. It's just what I've read. But yeah, it is. I do agree that so Joe, I do agree. He's commenting further, saying that if you looked at the order page in 2021, it did claim that it would have AAA gaming, and the tilt screen and all that other kind of stuff, and the 200 mile an hour top speed. Yes. So yes, I mean that's I will say that is typical of many big companies with advertising, but Tesla is a big offender of it for sure. I agree with you. They advertise something that it will be able to do in the future. FSD Beta, anyone, driving from LA to New York without any human interaction, you could robo-taxi your car, right? Like they sell the idea behind things they're trying to accomplish, even if it can't, and they don't always provide a free upgrade to do it. So far, they've generally provided a paid upgrade in a lot of cases for hardware. Some cases, it's been a free hardware upgrade, but yeah, not always, and that is unfortunate. So I agree and understand your frustration. I'm fortunate that I waited on ordering my Plaid, and I'm sure there'll be a new feature that comes out this year that I'll be pissed that mine doesn't do, and I'll be right there with you with pitchforks.
Well, speaking of promised features,
time to move on to our wonderful news of the caliper covers for the performance vehicles. Man, so how about Doug? Buddy. How about you give the background? Or no, actually, Mike, give the background on this one. Since this one really grinds your gears, to use a fun idiom.
Yeah, well, as someone that's actually swapped into the performance brakes on their base level Model 3, in days of old, when you ordered a Model 3P performance, you got performance brakes, different rotors, different calipers, different pads, both front and rear. And in fact, even on the rear, the electrical jumper cable is different between the base model and the 3P. What they're doing now, according to what we found on Twitter, the very latest Model Ys, Ps are coming with performance brakes on the front, but the rear brakes are the same brakes are on the long range, and Tesla's added a caliper cover that makes it look like the old school 3P caliper. And you're not getting the rotor, you're not getting the caliper, you're probably not getting the sport pads because they were physically different pads. They were Brembo brakes. And I think they're banking on the fact that most people that order a P are not out tracking the car. You know, they just want the P for the raw acceleration. And so the rear brakes probably are not really used that heavily to start with. So they can get away with this. But
Sure.
it's kind of a bait and switch, at least in my mind it is.
Yeah, so this all stemmed from a post. It was a tweet by ZEV Centric. And they basically said, as we took delivery of our 2023 Model Y last month, at some point Tesla decided to put caliper covers on the Performance Y. What does that mean? It's a smaller caliper and a smaller rotor, which is the same as the long range. So now you're just paying for the same brakes, but in red. Now, I guess what I'm wondering is this on both the front and rear, or is this just the rear? Because,
boy, I hope it's not on the front.
because I would imagine, like, if you're paying for performance, you're still getting.
So
the audio there, by the way, for those listening, is a video clip of them
hitting
smacking the cover. That's I'm trying to show that it's just a shell of a cover on top of the caliper.
So the 3P originally had different rotors, different calipers, different pads on the front, and they were all based around Brembo.
Mm-hmm.
The rear was the same. It was different caliper, different brakes, different rotor. In the tweets I found so far, it's only the rears they talk about.
Okay.
So I would assume the fronts are the 4-piston Brembo or something equivalent.
Right. So I'm going to go out there and say this is most likely cost cutting, right? This is most likely Tesla doing some cost cutting, trying to maximize profit, which, whatever, that's what businesses do. If it is just in the rear, I don't think it's as severe of a problem as people are making it out to be. Now, I get it. I understand.
It's still a bait and switch.
It is a bit of a bait and switch. However, when you track your car, the vast majority of your braking is done on the front.
On the front.
You're going to have most of your
absolutely.
That's where you're going to have most of your heat buildup. For my own car, if I'm going to be tracking it, I'm going to do air intakes on the front rotors and swap the rotors and bigger brake pads and all that stuff. I'll probably just do it on the front. I can't imagine doing all four. If I was paying for ceramics, I'd probably just do the front. So I don't think it's like the end of the world saying you're paying for it to just be painted red because you're still getting the front improvement.
Let's be really clear. And I didn't realize this till I started digging into getting the parts to do my swap. You can buy front brake pads for the Tesla Model 3P all day long from any number of vendors, including Tesla. They call them sport pads. Mm-hmm. When you start talking the rear brakes, the number of people that will supply you pads for the rear performance brakes are effectively one, maybe two. I had to talk to one company specifically, and they said, yeah, we can do it. But Tesla was really the only place I could get the rear pads from. Nobody else in the world sells them. Not for the P. They'll sell it to you for the base model, but not for the P. And one engineer I was talking to, we just don't sell them. I mean, nobody wears them out. Between one pedal driving and the fact that all your braking's done with the front, the only thing the rear pads are effectively used for is your emergency brake. That's it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
I guess my issue with this is just a little more philosophical. Right?
Ethical.
I don't. Well, maybe ethical too, but like the Elon mantra, the sort of Tesla SpaceX philosophy is always, the best part is no part.
Yeah.
And so
Okay.
here's
So
a
take the rear
part
brakes off.
here that is strictly cosmetic, and it feels like it's just it's almost like like the fake air vents that you'd see on like some Mitsubishi somewhere.
Speed
Well,
holes.
the old days of the hood scoop that didn't work.
The hood scoop that didn't go anywhere. So it feels like that kind of thing, and that just feels anti-Tesla. That just doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like Tesla. So I don't really get it. I mean, are these just, do they make their own pads? They do have a Tesla stamp on them. Is that part of their vertical integration? Or
well, all right. So if you're talking the base model, it's Tesla pads, but I'm sure they're made by somebody else. If you talk the performance brakes, it's all Brembo parts. It has a Tesla part number, but it also has a Brembo part number, and it's got the Brembo name on it. So
yeah, I mean, I could see why they would do this, but it just feels wrong. It just feels a little bad somehow.
I mean, I have a Model S Plaid, and my brake calipers aren't even red. So I mean,
well, we could fix that, I got some spray paint.
My old Nissan, had those sweet ass red calipers, and now I'm just like, they're just regular.
You get red, you get blue, you
calipers.
get yellow. Pick a color.
I'm gonna swap mine. I haven't done my brake swap yet. I plan on doing it when I throw in the new wheels.
But you're putting carbon in, right?
No, God, no.
Oh,
it's too
come
expensive.
on.
It's a daily driver. I'm not putting carbon ceramics on there. No, thank you. Yeah. I may be able to afford a Plaid, but I'm not willing to burn money just because I can.
On brakes.
Right? Like it's a little ridiculous. I mean, even if you track it, I don't think it's worth it, right? Like, I don't know. But yeah, we'll see.
I don't know. It depends what you're doing.
Yeah, indeed. Alrighty, well, lots of interesting stuff. I'm so glad that we're finally back into the new year. Another year down. Feeling older already. Lots of exciting news. We'll see what happens in the next couple weeks with the new versions. I'm sure we'll be back to tell you all about it.
In our previous episode, we did some predictions, and there's some YouTube shorts out about those predictions. So be sure to check those out.
You can laugh at how wrong we are.
See how accurate we are.
How accurate or wrong we are already. I don't know how we're doing. One of them was about Tesla stock and all that sort of stuff, and we'll probably end up being right about that one because
we're all pessimistic. No.
Well, we're pessimistic, but maybe we're realistic. I mean, it's got a long way to climb back. Given
there's a fine
value
line
that
there.
it's lost. So.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Been lots of rumors around things coming out of China and all kinds of stuff. So we'll see what happens with Tesla stock. But
people and cars.
Yeah, indeed. But yeah. So anyway, so this has been episode number 31. Again, thanks for hanging out with us. Appreciate everyone's love and support and hate. Keep the hate coming too. It's fine. As you can see, none of us have any hair, so it's so
we can't pull it out.
Can't turn gray on it. So, oh man. But I just want to thank all of our folks that helped make this happen, behind the scenes folks, Danny and James and Adam and others that I'm drawing a blank. You think I'd have this written down by now, or I'd have it memorized.
Yeah, that's pretty much it right now, I think.
That's pretty much it right now. So we've had other folks coming in and go in and out. As always, if you like what you're seeing, please like and subscribe. We appreciate it. If you want to become a supporting member on TeslaMotorsClub.com's website, that would be awesome as well.
Yep.
And thanks to Autel for sending the charger. Yeah, well, just in general, like, hey, if anyone else wants to send us some free stuff, we can review your product. Go for it. We again, thanks for the comments. We'll see you next time. Have a good one.
See ya.